Adam Michel joins me now, who's a Senior Policy Analyst at the Heritage Foundation. Adam, welcome to the program. And what is it at this point? What does it look like Congress is going to approve and the president is going to sign in the way of help for jobless Americans and businesses in trouble?
Well, thanks for having me on. What will ultimately be passed, I think, is still a ways away. The Republicans have put out their plan, which still hasn't passed the Senate. Republicans and Democrats then would have to come to a consensus on what they ultimately send to the president. And the two bills are quite far apart. Although the Senate's bill does include still over $1 trillion of new spending, it includes things that are similar to the House bill, like additional stimulus payments, like extending the expanded unemployment, but in a scaled back type of way, and providing additional money to support businesses that have been shut down during this crisis. But Democrats say that they don't go far enough and they want even more.
Oh, so what are the totals at this point? If we were to go with the Democrats' idea, how much are we talking about? How much money?
Over $3 trillion in additional relief if you pass if the Democrats' bill becomes law. That's on top of the more than almost $4 trillion in relief that's already been authorized. The Republicans' bill is just over $1 trillion. I think 1.2 are the estimates I've seen.
The reason I ask for that is, Adam, I'm a simple guy, so I like to translate things into simple terms. I've always thought when the government says we're going to spend $1 billion, that means $3 from every man, woman, and child. If it's $1 trillion, that means $3,000 from every man, woman, and child. If we're talking about $3 trillion, the Democrats are literally talking about something that will add a total of $9,000 for every man, woman, and child in America in new debt. So if you have a family of four, that's $36,000 that they're going to put on the Visa card of your family to be paid for at some point by someone sometime. But nobody knows exactly who's going to pay the bill. It's just, but that's an extraordinary sum of money. $36,000 for a family of four. $9,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. We need that much help because of the economic hit we've taken. That's the argument?
That's what they'd like you to believe. But it's even worse than that because that money is on top of the tremendous debt that we've already racked up. And in addition to the pre-crisis projected $1 trillion deficit Congress was expected to run. And that ultimately just means higher taxes in the future. And both businesses and individuals look to the future and know that those taxes have to go up. And so it puts a dampener on economic activity today and in the future in ways that you can't even fathom. And so the recklessness with which Congress is talking about these types of spending plans is, I think, really a shame.
Well, and that's why, Adam, look, I'm not suggesting there aren't people out there who need some help because something happened that through no fault of their own. This isn't the guy or gal who got himself or herself fired from a job for being a nitwit. This was something that hit the whole country. And some people are hit a whole lot harder. Some of us are still working. Some people have been out of a job for a while. But if we tell people we're going to pay you more to sit back and do nothing than to take any job out there that might replace the last job. And frankly, Adam, is it time for somebody to sort of have a come to Jesus moment with a lot of Americans in certain industries and say, look, your industry, for instance, restaurants and hospitality, I'm told that perhaps as much as 60% of the restaurant industry is going to go away. Now, it might come back someday when the economy is going vigorously and China virus has a vaccine and a bunch of other ifs. But until that day, if somebody says, well, I worked as a cook or a waiter in the restaurant industry, and you say, well, most of your industry went away. And you say, well, when's it coming back? Well, I don't know. Well, you need to pay me extra money until it comes back, even if that's a year from now or 2 years from now. That's not acceptable, is it?
The idea that we can keep the economy sort of frozen in place by sending checks to businesses and individuals indefinitely and for a year, however, whatever the vaccine is available, I think is is not only dangerous but denies a sort of fiscal realities. There just certainly isn't the ability to pump that much money for that long into the economy without something going horribly wrong with financial markets around the world. So so that's why when we talk about relief and we talk about what Congress should be doing, it needs to be first targeted and second temporary. But the targeted piece is most important. Right now, even Republicans are talking about sending another round of so-called stimulus checks to every man, woman, and child across America. And there's still 140 million Americans that do have their jobs and are pulling a paycheck. And to think that we should be spending money on those people right now when resources are limited and so many people are actually hurting I think is really really unfortunate.
Well, and when people say, but you have to help me, I say, well, look, I understand that there are employers right now who are saying we're trying to hire people and we can't hire people because people don't want to go back to work because of this largesse that's coming from Capitol Hill at the expense of all of us. And I say, well, let's stop doing the things that disincentivize people from going back to work. And I understand if somebody says, but I want to go back to my old job at the old place and that's all I'm going to settle for. That's a choice. That's not, it's not one of the things where we say, well, we need to make it possible for the guy who lost his job at a restaurant that no longer exists as the cook there to go back to work at that restaurant, at that job, at that paycheck. And you say that would be nice. It's not going to happen. So you need to find an alternative to go to work in because we can't afford as a nation to keep subsidizing tens of millions of people for that length of time. So why don't you go to work for some of the employers out there who are begging for people to come to work? Is that unreasonable?
Well, and it's even worse than that because it's not just about whether or not you take a different job. The current structure of the unemployment benefit puts an additional $600 on top of your state-level unemployment benefit, which means about 3 out of every 4 unemployed Americans is making more on unemployment than they did before the crisis. So even if a business is offering someone their job back, in many cases, I've heard from businesses across the country that simply their employees are saying, thanks, but no thanks. We're making more on unemployment. Why would we come back to our job until something changes?
And I'll tell you what, Adam,
Democrats want to extend.
I'm going to go you one worse than that. It's even worse than that. Imagine being the person, and I've heard from some of them who call the show who say, hey, I'm still working my job. I've still been working all the way through the China virus pandemic, and I'm making less money than the people who aren't working. And that's an artificial situation created by a bunch of politicians in Washington, D.C., who said to men and women who are still working hard and they're dealing with all the side effects of the pandemic, you're going to make less for actually working at a job than what we've arranged for people to make for not working at a job. And that is just absolutely unacceptable. Adam Michel is at the Heritage Foundation as a Senior Policy Analyst. Adam, thanks so much for the time. Coming up in a moment, Oregon State Police take over the protest duty from the feds, hoping for the best, planning for the worst, but last night they hid from the rioters. You're listening to the Lars Larson Show. We'll get to that next.